Hey guys, it's Iguana Immobilizer again, and congratulations, y'all have collectively gaslit me into thinking this plane isn't actually horrible. So basically I played a few more games in it, and hey, I think I actually had some fun playing it, but only because I knew that it was pretty terrible in the conventional sense, so doing well and winning dogfights was actually kinda satisfying. There were actually a few advantages this plane has that I overlooked when I made the first part, so I'll be going through them one by one, and based off of these advantages, I think I'm willing to bump this thing up from a C tier to a B tier. Definitely workable, and you can get some interesting fights, but it's still not my cup of tea. And it still gets pretty easily countered into a stalemate if the enemy knows what they're doing. Firstly, this thing can be unreasonably tanky sometimes. It's not consistent, and maybe it's the guns acting up again, but I've had multiple instances where the rear fuel tank absorbs the majority of damage while leaving the engine completely unharmed. You can see that this guy has completely damaged my rear end, but my engine is completely fine. I'm flying fine, I'm just turning a lot worse because my elevators are damaged. I got into this situation because I was trying to force a low-speed stall fight so that I could try to make the most of my flaps, but I neglected to lower my throttle, so I just ended up sitting in front of him. So next time I'll keep in mind that I need to actually lower throttle to get behind him. At this point, he's probably ignoring me because he thinks that I'm completely dead, but once I start shooting back at him, he's going to notice that I'm still alive. I'm still not 100% confident with these guns, but I think I am getting better. Still, most of these shots I don't think I'm going to hit. I'm mostly just trying to get him to turn around and actually fight me. And because he thinks my engine is dead, he's going to try and go up in the vertical to try and stall me out. Unfortunate for him, my engine is still perfectly fine. I can just climb straight up for him. It's just that my tail kinda sucks, so I can't turn quite as well, but that's not a big issue when he's going to stall himself out for me. It's still a pretty long-range shot, but I'm closing the distance, and it's going to be pretty easy because he's very slow right now. I felt pretty bad about this afterwards, so I just ended up J'ing out so that he got the kill. Advantage number 2, this plane plays effectively the same in both full up tiers and full down tiers. So you don't have to be too worried about facing things like I-225s or LF Mark 9s. You still essentially outclass them in the high-altitude climb aspect, so no matter what you do, you can really just go up and loop over and over again, and it's just going to be a continuous boom and zoom. You can see here that I'm fighting an LF Mark 9, and it's basically the same as if I were fighting a Zero or any other sort of plane. Now I will say that if you're not comfortable manipulating energy states of the enemy, then it's going to be very difficult for you to play in any other way other than a boom and zoom attack. Here all I'm just doing is I'm going up and then I'm coming back down onto him every single time he pulls off, and I'm not gonna lie, this is a very boring and methodical way of playing the game. I mean, it works, but neither of us are really gaining any advantage in this point. And just because I have an altitude advantage and I can decide when to dive on him doesn't mean that I technically have an advantage. Sure, he has to be watching out, but every single time I do dive, he can just dodge, and so effectively this is just a stalemate. And to me, this isn't a very interesting way to play the game. Especially since the time between each attacks is so long, I would rather just get up close and personal and try a dogfight. And at least the way we're playing it is just doing head-ons over and over again. Which maybe you enjoy, but I personally don't. And it looked like the Spitfire got fed up with my tactics. He's just full sending it up into a stall. Which does give me the advantage here, but I don't really feel good about having won in this way. It just sort of feels like I bugged him enough to the point where he was just like, fine, I'll give you the advantage, and I'll be the one to take the risk in this situation. Like, if he was feeling really sweaty, then he could have just continued what we were doing earlier over and over again, but to be honest, this is a waste of both of our times, so honestly, I'm not that big a fan of this kind of gameplay. Advantage number 3, on top of its excellent maneuvering energy retention, its linear energy retention is also really good. This can sort of get in the way if you're trying to lose speed and trying to force an overshoot, but it can also be helpful if you're trying to catch somebody in a dive that's going past your level flight speed, or if you just need to really get the heck out of a specific situation by diving. And I think I over-exaggerated its high-speed compression a little bit in the last video. The compression definitely starts at 450 kph, but it's not completely unworkable until you get past the 600. Like, it's definitely not good at high speeds, but it's still workable as long as you stay below that range. In this next clip, I'm chasing after a P-51D20, and you'll see that I'm actually catching up to him quite quickly. I came in from a dive, and even though the dive was very shallow, I'm staying way above my leveled flight speed. And I'm even accelerating, I'm gaining speed. If I were in some other plane like the J2M2, then I would not be accelerating, I would actually be losing speed, and I probably wouldn't have been able to catch up to this guy. Now, granted, he was carrying bombs, but you'll still note that I was going 600 plus, going way above my top speeds. Also, I don't know if I should count this as a full advantage, but you can use the Funni rudder roll flat spin to try and force overshoots like this. It only really works if you have the time and space for you to sort of just sit in one spot for a while, but for that purpose it does work, I guess. I don't know if I have the balls to try and use that in an actual dogfight though. Advantage number 4, because this thing has such good low-speed dogfighting performance, if you're able to get a low-speed, equal-energy, high-altitude dogfight with another enemy that's not a Spitfire or a Zero, then you have a very good chance of winning in that kind of fight. Now that is a lot of stipulations, and if you actually want to try and get that kind of low-speed fight, then you do have to set it up in a very particular way, such that both of you are going upwards in a vertical scissors at low speed so that you can actually use your flaps. But when you do, you can actually dogfight quite a lot of enemies that you normally wouldn't think you'd be able to dogfight in this thing. T-152s, Ki-84s, BF-109 K4s, maybe Yak-3s, though they're going to be on the same team as you, so it's kind of hard to test that. And oftentimes you don't really get into those situations that often, because if you're in a normal match, then there's going to be a lot of third-partying happening, and if you do stall somebody out, then they're probably going to die from somebody else. But when you do get those 1v1 dogfight opportunities, and you do get those shots, then it is definitely a lot more satisfying to pull off than the generic boom and zoom or the generic rope-a-dope, since it actually feels like you've outskilled them. Advantage number 5, I did sort of show this in the last video, but I didn't actually explicitly state it, and I didn't really think about it too much. This plane has quite a good sustained turn rate. Now the turn circle is still quite wide, so you're not going to beat a Spitfire or a Zero in a rate fight, but if you're going 400 in a horizontal turn, then you can quite quickly zip around the entire loop. So even if your turn circle is wide, you do actually complete that circle fairly quickly. You can see here that I'm in the classic vertical stalemate with this Ki-61, which is no slouch in a dogfight, just going back up and down over and over again. And then I decide to follow him horizontally from above, and while the turn circle again is still quite wide, I am able to zip around pretty quickly and get into his circle, giving me a shot, and unfortunately I'm whiffing every single one of these. But the point still stands, this thing rates quite well. As long as you're in a situation where your turn circle can be wide, your nose can zip around pretty quickly. I think my bad aim is doing psychological damage to him though, so after multiple passes, he ends up succumbing to his brain damage and decides to just crash into the ground. And one additional point about this plane, not having to deal with the overheating using manual engine controls is actually quite nice. I didn't count it against it in the previous video, but it was still kind of annoying to try and manage it all the time. So not having to deal with that does remove one layer of inconvenience. I was hoping I wouldn't have to mess with any of the other manual engine controls if I just wanted to open the oil radiator, but this thing doesn't have auto prop pitch controls, so the recommendations for the settings that I've seen online are using 75% prop pitch, 100% oil radiator, and 40% fuel mixture. I've seen some people recommending that you change these depending on how fast you're going, how much throttle you're applying, what altitude you're at, but I was too lazy to actually mess around with those settings or even to test these. I just wanted the oil radiator to stay open full percent, so I just used those settings throughout the entire time and it worked perfectly fine for me and I didn't have any issues. Now typically I wouldn't take a close quarters scissors fight with a Zero, but I wanted to try pushing this plane just to see how well it could perform in these kinds of situations, and well, if that shot hit, I would have been very happy, but unfortunately it did not. I'm thinking, hey, maybe I might be able to pull up here, and then I realized that, no, I definitely won't be able to do that, so it's time to use this plane's great linear energy retention to get the heck out of here. I'm not going to run too much, I'm going to see if I can recommit into the fight, and then see if I can get that overshoot shot to work just this time. But unfortunately we end up in that same vertical stalemate again, and I pulled down way too early, so he is installed out completely and I'm not able to execute upon that kill. And to make matters worse, a Sea Fury with 4 kills on the enemy team has decided to show up and he's here to kill me. So once again, I'm going to run a little bit and gain some energy. The Sea Fury isn't that good of a plane, I just have to be worried about his guns and the fact that he's probably just going to run if he doesn't hit me in the first try. Looks like they pulled off, so I'm going to try and recommit for that Zero. I'm not entirely sure which target to choose here, but the Sea Fury is definitely running away much faster, so I think the Zero might be an easier target at the moment. Sea Fury's back, I'm going to go up in the vertical again, and let's see if they want to stall up for me this time. If this is going to be a 2v1, then unfortunately I am going to have to resort to boring boom and zoom rope-a-dope attacks, but that's just the game, I suppose. Now it does take a keen eye to try and figure out what the enemy's energy state is. Based off the distance, you can see how quickly they're converging upon your position and your own speed to see whether they're approaching at a rate that would be unsustainable, and so here I'm able to execute upon this stall shot. He committed too hard to that fight, and so he pays the price. Maybe he was just tired of me running that whole time and so wanted to take that risk. War Thunder isn't a game that rewards patience most of the time, so honestly, if that's his way of giving up so that he wastes less time and so he can jump into the next battle, then I respect it. Zero is also coming after me, but he's not coming straight directly up for me, so I'm going to delay my turn a little bit with Neg-G and hope that he tries to pull in, noticing that my turn is poor. And then I'm going to spring the surprise and show them that I could actually turn really well. I was just pretending not to so that he would take the bait upwards. And that's a severe. I'm just barely out of reach of getting to the last bomber, but we still do end up winning when the timer runs out on tickets, so I guess I'll take that win. That was a surprisingly satisfying match, and I can't say that I didn't have fun playing it. So I guess I do kind of like this plane a little bit better now. Anyways, that's all for now. Bye bye.